5-Watt World is supported in part by TruFire. Learn, practice, and play with TruFire. Hi, this is Keith Williams. Welcome to 5-Watt World. We're interested in helping you get the most music from the least gear. On a summer day in 1992, I was hanging about at Ithaca Guitar Works, eyeing the new arrivals and enjoying the sun that was pouring through the huge front windows. There were a few of us milling around, looking at the higher-end guitars hanging above us, just out of reach, when the music playing in the store changed. Everyone in the store froze. Talking ceased, guitars laid forgotten, and the whole store stood still, listening. After a full minute, I turned back to the owner and said, "God, Chris, what is that?" He handed me the CD jacket to The Sky is Crying. I would learn that this tune was Boot Hill, and that guitarist was Stevie Ray Vaughan. I lingered a little while longer, but after the cover of Kenny Burrell's Chitlin Con Carne, I left the store and walked directly to the record store on the Commons where I bought that CD. Yeah, I was a little late to Stevie Ray Vaughan. In those years, I still thought music started and ended in the 1950s jazz world. But that sunny moment in Ithaca Guitar Works is one I won't forget. So if you'd like to know more about the guitars SRV used to inspire a generation, then stay tuned, because this is the 5-Watt World, short history of the guitars of Stevie Ray Vaughan. If you enjoy our videos, make sure to subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, grab a hoodie or a Stomp preset pack to support what we do here. And to become a bigger part of 5-Watt World, sign up on Patreon for the Friends of 5-Watt. The links are in the description. Stevie Ray Vaughan was born on October 3rd, 1954 in Dallas, Texas. He was inspired to play guitar by his brother Jimmy, 3 years his elder, and began playing when he was just 7 years old. Just before he finished high school, he dropped out and moved to Austin, Texas, where he began building a following playing the local club circuit. In 1978, he joined Tommy Shannon on bass and Chris Layton on drums, forming Double Trouble, and they soon became one of the biggest acts in the big state of Texas. David Bowie would see him play at the Montreux Jazz Festival in 1982, which led to an invitation to play on the hit Let's Dance, released by Bowie in 1983. The group was then discovered by John Hammond, who helped them get a record deal with Epic Records. Their debut album, Texas Flood, was an instant hit. Touring and television appearances followed, and he quickly became the leading figure in a blues revival in the 1980s. Unfortunately, throughout most of his life, Stevie struggled with drugs and alcohol. His fame only worsened his addictions, which negatively affected his personal and professional life, including his marriage to Lenora "Lenny" Bailey. Stevie's first guitar was a hand-me-down from his brother Jimmy. It was a 3/4 scale 1957 Gibson ES 125T with a single P90 pickup near the neck. His next guitar would also come down to him from his brother, a 1951 Fender Broadcaster nicknamed Jimbo for the deep carving Jimmy had done on the back of the guitar. According to Doyle Bramhall, who was a family friend, Stevie would use the guitar without asking Jimmy for permission. This led to any number of arguments, and in the middle of one such altercation, Doyle suggested to Jimmy that he just give Stevie the guitar, since Jimmy was no longer using it with his band. Jimmy agreed, and Stevie got his first Fender. It was a classic 51 spec ash body and one-piece maple neck. Stevie would remove the finish on the body and wire it eventually to have 2 volume controls instead of the original volume and blend controls of the early Tele-style guitars. After going through a number of hands, Vaughan's Broadcaster would eventually be sold in 1983 for $250,000. According to Jimmy, Stevie had tried to route the Broadcaster out to install 2 P90s, but the job was such a failure that he didn't want Jimmy to see it, and so in 1971 he traded that guitar for a 1963 Epiphone Riviera. Back in '63, Epiphones were being built on the same production lines in the Gibson factory in Kalamazoo, Michigan as the Gibson guitars. Except for the mini humbucking pickups and different style trash-piece tailpiece, a '63 semi-hollow Epiphone was every bit as professional a guitar as a Gibson 335 from the same year. This might explain why Stevie's guitar had a Gibson Veritone switch like you would see on a Gibson 345 or 355 model from those years. This might have originally been a special order, or Stevie may have had the guitar modded himself. He also later had a second pickguard installed on the guitar. This was Stevie's main guitar until he acquired his No. 1 Stratocaster in 1974. No. 1 would feature heavily on the albums and live recordings we have from Stevie. In 1974, Vaughan would buy his number one at Ray Henning's Heart of Texas Music Shop in Austin. Famously, the owner discouraged Stevie from buying the guitar, saying, "That's the worst guitar in the shop." But Vaughan felt there was something to the guitar. They took it down, took it apart, put it back together again, setting it up the way Stevie liked it. The guitar had been traded to Henning a couple of weeks earlier by guitarist Christopher Cross. It was already built of a parts caster then. It had a neck that came from a 63 on a body from a 62. One of the three pickups was stamped as having been made in 59, and the assumption is that all three were from that original batch. By 86, Stevie's guitar tech, Rene Martinez, had to replace the original 62-63 neck due to the wear from playing and multiple refret jobs. Martinez replaced it with another round laminate board neck that likely was also from a 62 or 63, as well as it had the same construction. It's believed that the replacement was from another of Stevie's Strats, a red 62. In 1990, a sound baffle fell during a show, damaging that neck, and Fender provided a replacement. This was just a couple of months before Vaughan passed away, and all of the final shows were with that modern neck. After his death, Martinez put the original worn-out neck back on the guitar as something of a tribute. To keep up with the demands of using 13-gauge strings, usually tuned down at just a half step, Stevie moved to using jumbo frets. Fender uses Dunlop 6150 on the signature guitars, and it's reasonable to assume that they are at least close to the original guitar's fret size. The left-handed tremolo came from Cesar Diaz, and Stevie installed it himself. Supposedly, the custom sticker under the bridge is there to cover some less-than-perfect carving done by Stevie to make it fit. Of course, Fender has done multiple runs of Stevie Ray Vaughan's signature guitars at the production, team-built, and master-built custom shop levels. They've been done in various forms with different levels of relicking to simulate the hard use that number one received in its lifetime. There's no doubt that Stevie was rough on his guitars. He struck the strings hard and toured extensively. The thin nitro sunburst finish was simply not durable enough to stand up to the miles that Stevie put on that instrument. Here, tuned down to E-flat as Stevie and Jimi Hendrix had, Greg Koch puts a team-built custom shop artist SRV from the inventory at Wildwood Guitars through its paces, dancing on the edge of some things you might almost recognize. It should be noted that the fretboard would have originally been the 7 1/4 inch radius, but subsequent refretting and fingerboard work would have slowly flattened out the board. For this reason, combined with his brother Jimmy's input on how to make a guitar that would more easily deliver Stevie's tone to home players in the 90s, the signature guitars have a 12-inch radius board. They also feature pickups that are significantly more powerful than those that were probably originally in number one. Assuming that all three pickups were in fact from 59, or even if they were a mix between 59 and 63, the Texas Specials that the signature would ultimately ship with were intended to replicate tonal pieces that were hard to replicate at the time, and feature a bridge pickup that is noticeably overwound. I reached out to TruFire to be my sponsor because I've used them for years. With over 2 million users worldwide, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced level player, TruFire has lessons to enhance and inspire your playing. Get 35% off courses using the promo code 5watt35, or like I do, sign up for the All Access Pass to use the entire TruFire catalog. I really like TruFire, and I think if you give them a shot, you'll like them too. Sign up now to start your journey to being a better guitarist. I'd like to thank TruFire for their support in making this video. In 1978, Stevie had a chance to gig with Hubert Sumlin. At the time, Stevie was using a Rickenbacker 360 Capri guitar as well as number one. Supposedly, Hubert showed up for one of the last shows on the tour without a guitar, and Stevie gave him the Rickenbacker and an amp to get him through it. In '79, Stevie came across a 1965 Stratocaster when making the rounds of the pawn shops in Austin. He really liked it, but the $350 price tag was beyond him at the time. So his wife organized his friends to chip in $50 each, and they bought him the guitar for his birthday. Originally a Sunburst, it had been stripped and finished in a dark natural. Around 1981, he'd swapped the original rosewood board neck with a mid-50s neck that he got from his brother Jimmy. The guitar was signed by Mickey Mantle on the back from when Stevie had played the national anthem at the season opener for the Houston Astros in 1985. Vaughan used the guitar to record many of his most tender ballads. Of course, he played Lenny on the guitar, but also Riviera Paradise. Previously owned by Vince Martell of the band Vanilla Fudge, Vaughan bought a yellow 1959 Stratocaster from Charlie Wirtz of Charlie's Guitar Shop in Dallas in the early 80s. The guitar had been heavily routed before coming to Charlie, so he went ahead and did more. He painted the guitar yellow, then cut a pickguard that would hold just a single neck Stratocaster pickup. He gave the guitar to Stevie, who played it on Live at Montreux in 1982. He also used the guitar on the album version of Honeybee and Tell Me. The yellow guitar would be stolen when the band was out on tour in 1985. Now we arrive at the first of Stevie's Tokai guitars. He can be seen holding the springy sound Strat-style guitar on the cover of Texas Flood. The cover was a drawing based on a photograph that clearly shows the Tokai logo on the headstock. In '85, Stevie signed an endorsement deal with Tokai and received 5 guitars from them. Most of the images of Stevie with these guitars come from Tokai's own promotional materials at the time. On the album Couldn't Stand the Weather, Stevie used a Gibson Johnny Smith model guitar to play the tune Stand Swang. Stevie was influenced by many jazz guitarists, but most notably by Kenny Burrell, whose Chitin Carcani cover Stevie did would eventually be released on The Sky is Crying. The most famous of Stevie's guitars that came from Charlie Wirtz was the white Strat with Danelectro lipstick tube pickups. It was a parts caster using neck and body parts that were being produced by Larry DiMarzio at the time. The back of the guitar carried a Hula Girl sticker, and the neck plate was engraved to Stevie Ray Vaughan, more in '84. Vaughan used the guitar on Life Without You, which was his tribute to Wirtz, who had passed away in '84, and you can also see him playing it on the Live at Montreux video. In 2003, Charlie's Guitar Shop and Rene Martinez built limited edition replicas of the guitar, selling them for $2,500 each. Fender would later also produce replicas of that guitar. Built by Buffalo, New York guitar builder James Hamilton, the Hamiltone guitar was commissioned by Billy Gibbons as a gift for Stevie. It's a neck-through design with 2-piece maple body. Originally equipped with 3 EMG pickups, they were, somewhat ironically, damaged during the filming of the video for Couldn't Stand the Weather and were replaced with Fender pickups. Images of the fretboard alone are some of the most iconic images of SRV playing. In '83 or '84, Stevie bought the '62 refinished Fender Strat at Charlie's Guitar Shop. It's likely the donor neck that was put on Stevie's #1 guitar when that neck was used up from multiple refret jobs. The red Strat then was fitted with a reverse headstock neck. Stevie often used this guitar live to play Pride and Joy and Love Struck Baby. At an in-store appearance, Stevie would buy a 1961 Fender Strat that would be nicknamed Scotch, based on the darkened Olympic white finish. There's some debate about whether this, not the red Strat, may have been the donor guitar for the replacement neck on #1. While it started life as a backup guitar, by '89 it came into heavier use as the #1 Strat began to suffer from all the years of hard use. You can see Stevie playing Scotch on the Austin City Limits episode from 1990. On The Sky is Crying tune Boot Hill, Stevie used an early Gibson ES-150, which is generally referred to as a Charlie Christian model, as it was Christian that made the guitar famous playing with Benny Goodman's quintet. A fully hollow body, non-cutaway guitar, it was one of the first electric guitars produced and had a solid spruce top, solid maple back and sides, a mahogany neck, and a rosewood fretboard. It carried a single pickup, which we also now refer to as a Charlie Christian-style pickup. On the cover of In Step, Stevie is holding a 1930s National Duolian resonator guitar. According to Rene Martinez, this is one of Stevie's favorite guitars, and he carried it out on the road with him to work on new material. On the January 1990 MTV Unplugged performance, Stevie used a Guild JF65-12 12-string guitar to play Pride and Joy and Rude Mood. He actually borrowed the guitar from his friend and personal assistant Timothy Duckworth. One of Guild's top-line models at the time with a spruce top, fancy maple back and sides, and abalone fretboard inlay. Supposedly, Stevie's playing style was so rough in the performance that the Guild's neck was cracked in use. And finally, perhaps poetically, Stevie used a very early acoustic Gibson L1 guitar from the 1930s. This model is the one that we most often see in the hands of early blues greats like Robert Johnson, who Stevie so obviously took influence from. Based on the fact that it's a flat-top L1, it would have been built somewhere between 1926 and 1937. The lack of fretboard binding and pickguard, along with the 12th-fret neck, means it probably was built before 1932. Stevie played the guitar in an interview in 1983, and it's sitting behind him during the MTV Unplugged performance. Almost like all those great bluesmen, were looking over his shoulder during the performance. His fourth studio album, In Step, would reach 33rd on the US charts and included his biggest hit, Crossfire. The band became one of the most in-demand acts in the world of blues and headlined a show at Madison Square Garden in 1989 and the Beale Street Music Festival in Memphis the next year. Tragically, Vaughan died in a helicopter accident on August 27, 1990, after performing at the Alpine Valley Music Theater. In 2003, David Frick from the Rolling Stone magazine named him the 7th greatest guitarist of all time. He was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, along with Chris Layton, Tommy Shannon, and Reese Winans in 2015. Perhaps even more telling, Stevie would be one of those heroes of many amazing later guitarists, including Eric Johnson, John Mayer, Eric Gales, and David Grissom, to just name a few. The tone that launched 1,000 Tube Screamers. 10,000? 100,000? Likely. The total impact of Stevie Ray Vaughan would be difficult to measure. Between his career cut short by tragedy, his strong attack, and no-holds-barred approach to playing the guitar, he's one of the few players that has so much going on, I find I'm almost tired after listening to one of his records. His tone was so powerful that it's itself a collaborator on his records. For a while, a long while frankly, it seemed like everyone had to sound like Stevie, or at least tried to. He drew on some of the greatest guitarists for inspiration, but he made the music his own, and for that, we'll be listening to him for generations to come. If I forgot your favorite Stevie Ray Vaughan guitar, please mention it in the comments for everyone to enjoy. I need to once again thank John Cordy for playing a modern Tokai 50s maple neck guitar like the one from the Tokai poster in the mid-80s. I need to thank Chris Buck for his permission to use the clip of him playing an early John Mayer Strat that was very heavily based on SRV's original signature guitar. I need to thank Wildwood Guitars for their permission to use the clip of Greg Koch playing the Custom Shop SRV Strat. I need to thank Perry McManus, my script editor. If you follow the channel's Instagram account, you already understand Perry's commitment to Stratocaster-shaped objects. If not, go to Instagram and check out the Wednesday entries from 5 Watt East. Most importantly, I need to thank all of you that have gone to the store to buy a hoodie or a Stomp preset pack. And in particular, I want to thank the friends of 5 Watt on Patreon. You folks are 5 Watt World. I just make the videos. Until next time, this is Keith Williams. Thanks for being a part of the 5 Watt World.